In 1933, the U.S. abandoned the gold standard. Why? Mid rising inflation and an economic pessimistic outlook on current changes in the American way of life, the government took us off the gold standard for one simple reason. Creditors could no longer demand to be repaid by gold. That changed things, and it made things different. And now, the current economic times we live in are reflecting a lot of those 1930s issues. And we see many people constantly talking about on videos and news and all over the place what gold can do for your portfolio. It's like a new hype word. And it used to be, it hasn't been that way in years. And in my opinion, the fears that run those investing decisions are not beneficial to smart investing strategies. See, it comes down to a mindset, right? There's only two reasons, in my opinion, to ever use gold and silver. You're either hedging against inflation or the loss of your dollar's value, or you're trying to profit, or you should be, from the frenzy that is caused by fear and greed currently in the market, but always present in the stock market. So that's what I want to talk about. Bottom line it for you, two ways, and break it down how to use gold and silver and the current climate to benefit yourself in the best way possible. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Robert Morris, your friend in success. If you're new to the Rob Review, glad to have you. If you're watching us on WHIG or you're watching us online, there's a lot of other videos that you could benefit from, I believe. This, again, is a show based upon my opinion, what I do with my money. I am not a financial advisor. I do not have the ability to give you, nor will I give you, nor do I want to give you currently advice on your money. However, I feel like subjects talked about on this show, especially what we're going to talk about today, is important for you to feel at ease with your financial situation. So we're going to talk about my opinions here. And my opinions about gold and silver are really simple. Two ways to use them. One, as a hedge, and not really so much a hedge, because a hedge is defined as a way to, make sure that you're backed on the other side of a position. Meaning if you put on a call, you can hedge with shorts. Hedge funds do that with every position they have to. That's their definition of a way of running a business. I don't really hedge with gold and silver. I just buy for a benefit of making sure that if anything happens, I have a way to pay for things and to make sure that I am taken care of. So it's not so much a hedge, but that's the best way to put it. Number one mindset is to hedge inflation and pessimistic economic times. Number two is profiting from the crazy precious metal frenzy. Sometimes there's precious metal fever in the air, and that's what there is today. That's what I call it. But then there's also always fluctuations in the price of gold and silver. So we're going to start with the first, how to hedge, right? It's pretty simple. By buying gold and silver with a purpose of later using it if the worst of the worst happens. See, I was always taught that successful people prepare for the good and the bad and the ugly of life, right? What's the ugly of life? The ugly truth of life is that we all live in societies that are at risk of falling apart. We don't want it to happen, but if it does, what are some truths that you know to be real? One, if society breaks down, you got to have a way to get the goods you need to survive. Food, shelter, water, those necessities, clothing somewhat. Also, if society breaks down, with the mind of an investor thinking about it from a successful CEO point of view, there's a lot of opportunity out there. People are going to want to and need to sell you things for crazy, outrageously low prices just to get out from under them. And so I buy gold and silver with the purpose of making sure that if my dollar can no longer be used, I can use gold and silver to transact. That's what I've always been taught. So, how do I do that? Well, let's look at a chart. Looking at this chart of the gold and silver sector index. Its ticker symbol is $XAU. This is what I've always been taught to use in a way to kind of read an average of what gold and silver are being priced at. I use this index to purchase, just like any other stock. Look at the monthly and the weekly chart on your screen right now. You see where these dips happen? Where you've got declines, and then it starts to turn up, and then declines, and it starts to turn up. Well, every time it starts to turn up, and it's going to go up for weeks or months at a time, I simply see that as a buying opportunity to use money I've already placed in an account to buy not the index, but hard gold and silver. And where do I buy it from? A place I have always found is trustworthy. And that place is apmex.com. So that's apmex.com. I don't have any affiliation with them. I don't own the business, nor do I get money from them. I just trust that what they're selling me has always been, and I've always found it to be, the real thing. And that's important because I, again, am not buying precious metals to do anything other than hoard in case the worst happens. What do you think the three main reasons are that you would need to use gold and silver for in a time when things get really ugly? Well, main, you're going to need shelter, right? And this is where the guy that taught me this, a story is really the best way to tell this. He told me, he said, Robbie, so what do you want to use gold and silver for? You know, you got to think about the purpose of everything you're doing. If the bad happens, how are you going to protect your family? Well, I'm going to hoard myself in my house, and I'm going to make sure that I protect it with everything I have. And he said, that's great, but do you really have your house? And I said, absolutely, I own it outright. It's my house. I owe nobody for it. He said, wrong. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, in a bad economic time, what's the one thing the government is still going to want for you to keep your home? Property taxes. See, the government is still going to want those. Want them even more because they're going to need the tax money. And they will, just like we all know, come and take your home from you because you might own your home, but you don't really own the land that it sits on if the government decides they don't want you to have it anymore because you're behind on your property taxes. So during a time when the dollar can't be used anymore, you got to have gold and silver to transact and be able to give the government the property taxes they need and the taxes they need on your income, right? You got to be able to pay things like that. That's important. Number two, you want to be able to purchase food, shelter, those types of things you need. I mean, we already talked about shelter, but food and water and other basic necessities. You want to be able to purchase those, so you don't want some large brick to buy a couple of apples or to go to the grocery store and buy $100 worth of groceries. No, you want some gold coins that are small in value, able to carry really easily. So you want a mix, in my opinion, of both gold and silver and large bullion as well as small coins. That is important because the third piece is, in my opinion, one of the best, which is just a way of looking at it. Hate me if you want to for saying this, but there's going to be people that don't prepare like you do, that didn't think about the good and the bad and the ugly like you're doing now. And they're going to have to sell off assets in order to keep their family alive. And so during bad times, you can go and say, hey, I know you need this money. Here's a gold bar or two. I want to buy your 100 acres from you outright, or I want to buy your business from you, or I want to buy X, Y, and Z. Whatever the case may be, there are assets that you will be able to scoop up for pennies on the dollar because nobody else can. And everybody has needs. Okay, so now let's talk about profiting from this emotional frenzy of movement towards gold and silver as the precious metals that they've always been, but now people are seeing them as the savior of their money, right? And that is not the case. I don't believe you should look at it like that. I don't look at it like that. But in a trader's mindset, stepping kind of outside of the investor long-term mindset now and more in like the short-term profit trader mindset, there's a lot of money to be made in that emotional frenzy. See, just like everybody has said to you probably before, if you're involved in the stock market, it's run by fear and greed. That's what it's about. And you profit from the fear and you sell into the greed. And it's the same thing with gold and silver. So going back to the index that we were talking about before, the gold and silver index, $XAU, I love using options to profit from the same rises that I was just talking about buying into with gold, right? And so instead of buying the gold with the money into the rise, just look at the same chart there. How many times during a year does that thing rise for several weeks at a time, right? Now, if you broke this chart down further, what you would see is just from January of 2021 to January of 2023, there were times that you could have done short-term trades in the gold and silver index. And you say, well, how do I trade the gold and silver index? Really, really simple solution to that. Call options and put options. The gold and silver index, just like any other index in the stock market, it has to have prices for the strikes that it rises into, right? And so you buy into the rise and you sell as it breaks off. You might not use a weekly chart for that. You might use a more efficient daily chart because the rises are going to happen in spurts of probably 10 to 15 days at a time. But you could use a weekly chart if you wanted to. And here's the thing, this is a great way to make the money to buy gold and silver with. If you're stretched for cash, as many people are these days, and you're looking for, okay, I want to buy gold and silver, but I've got $2 or $3 grand lying around, one purchase, and that wipes that out. Maybe take the $2 or $3 grand and trade gold and silver indexes for a year or two. Build up the capital. And as you roll it into long-term asset purchases. The second way to profit from this frenzy is one that a lot of people don't think about. Gold mining operations need money, and they are everywhere, okay? A couple of examples. $GOLD. That is a gold mining company. It's one that I look at a lot as a investment stock, okay? So you can invest into the rises of Barrick Gold Corporation. That's how I think it's pronounced, BC for short. You can see that it's a chart right here. It's got good earnings, rises that you can trade, and declines there. Same thing with ticker symbol, AEM. That's the Agnico, I call it Eagle Mines Limited. That's another gold mining operation that I buy shares in. And it's very tradable, in my opinion, as far as you can profit from the rises, or you can buy it as a long-term asset. And if you buy it as a long-term asset, you can do the same kind of strategy with the gold index, where you use puts on the decline to offset the loss in your stock or your index, okay? And so then there's ETFs. There's tons of gold ETFs. Gold ETFs are just like any other ETF on the exchange. They're built up of a conglomerate of, most gold ETFs are invested in the top 10 mining industries in the world. Two of those I just mentioned, and there's a few more. So you got to look at what your ETF owns to see if you want to invest in it. Trading it doesn't really matter. You're just looking for volatility, all right? Now, the third and final way to profit, in my opinion, and one of the best, is trading companies that profit from mining, gold and silver, platinum, all those are mined, right? And if you're not a sophisticated investor, you probably have never had the advantage of being able to invest in a gold or silver mine. Forget just buying the mine. How about buying companies like Cat Tractor, one of my favorite stocks in the mining group, okay? It moves a lot, so you can trade it and you can also purchase it because it's a great company, all right? Now, the third piece to this puzzle in the purchase of Cat Tractor, let's just look at the chart for Cat Tractor and the gold and silver index side by side. If you look at them pulled up on the screen here, you can see a lot of similarities. And so what I do, after much research, I have found that the gold and silver index is a catalyst to movement for Cat Tractor stock. And so what you can do is watch the gold and silver index. When it's looking to rise, most of the time Cat Tractor rises as well. And you can either buy Cat Tractor stock and then sell it at the end of the rise, or, of course, going back to my love of options, you can buy some calls, sell some naked puts, and profit from the rise that way. So you know now how to hedge, or for lack of a better word, hedge your inflationary fears with gold and silver. You know how to do that. And then you know how to, while you're hedging or while you're trying to find the money to buy the gold and silver to stock away, you can allow yourself to take some money and put it to work, profiting from the frenzy, and then taking pieces off of that, some kind of percentage off of that, and putting it aside in a wealth account to purchase the gold and silver the way we talked about it. So there you have it, folks. I hope you have enjoyed this. Look, I believe gold and silver is a valuable asset. I'm not going to knock that, obviously, but I just believe you need to know the purpose as to why you're doing something. Don't just do it blindly. Quick story for you that I was told by a mentor of mine. The purpose of gold and silver, I believe, is said best in this story. Young man gets left a house by his grandfather. He goes to do repairs in the house and finds gold and silver lining the roof, the inside of the roof of the house. So much so that the house has structural sagging in the roof because of the gold and silver. Why was it lining it, you ask? Why didn't it just put it in a vault? Because when his grandfather bought the gold and silver, the government didn't allow you to stash it away like that. It was illegal at that time. And so his grandfather, though believing in the power of gold and silver, stashed it away for a rainy day and left it to his son and then grandson without even knowing it. The grandson stumbled upon a fortune of millions of dollars, and it's a true story. I've met the guy who it happened to. Point being, you're not doing this just for yourself, okay? Step outside of yourself for a little bit, and even if you don't have a long-term family plan of your own, somebody you know, you can leave this to. You're planning for a better future for yourself, your loved ones of any kind, whether they're direct family, direct kids, or just loved ones, okay? Be the person that starts the change in your family and start thinking like an investor and a CEO about your financial position. Do not wait until everything hits the fan to do something, because then it's always too late. You prepare for the worst and the ugly when the good is happening. That's always the best way to do it. Preparation is the way of a successful individual.